Welcome to the Motoring Podcast, your weekly discussion of motoring news. This is episode 554 on Monday, the 27th of November, 2023. Hello, I'm Alan.
Hello, I'm Andrew. And this week we'll be looking at how two become one. Well, sort of. In new car news, we satisfy our EV off-roading needs. And in points of interest, the lunchtime read teaches us how Italy thwarted the Americans again.
Dum, dum, dum.
We go straight into some new news for a change. No follow-up, thankfully. And this is the big news from last week, really. NISSAN are going to invest £2 billion into their Sunderland plant and area, which will mean that they will be building the new Cash Cow and Duke EVs up there. This is big news. It's no real surprise. Let's be honest, is it, Alan?
Well, you wouldn't expect it to be a surprise, if you know what I mean. Well, given that it's in the same country as your technical centres, your design centres, and the nice, shiny new battery production facility that has been built right beside your factory, you wouldn't think it would be a big surprise. However, these days, anything could happen. So it's nice confirmation. You kind of hoped it was going to happen. You'd looked at it and thought, this should happen. But politics, the world, phase of the moon, all these kind of things do seem to have big impacts on this kind of decision these days. Yeah, there was always the chance it wasn't going to happen, but I'm really pleased with this. It's going to be the EV360 hub is where it's going to be built.
Okay.
360.
All right, whatever.
The word zero, by the way, is written out with a capital Z for Eero.
Yes.
Z for Eero.
Yep. But this is all part of their project where they're going to stop selling internal combustion engine cars in Europe and the UK in 2030. Or by 2030, sorry. Not in 2030, but by 2030. It was a natural progression. But as you say, just really glad that they have officially announced that it was going to happen and not something... Suddenly there's a plant going in Spain or northern France, which seems to be doing its best to take over all the EVs of Europe.
Yeah. It was never really going to be northern France because that is the lair of Renault. Yeah. It's not going to happen. Interesting point here, which I did actually know, but is worth repeating, that about 80% of the cars built in Sunderland are exported abroad. Important for international trade, really.
Yep.
Who'd have thought it?
Do you want to stick in the UK?
Yeah. There's some changes going on at Hyundai and Genesis in the UK. I'm really stressing the in the UK bit here. And we're talking about it, but it is very much all back office stuff.
Yeah, the customers are not going to notice a difference, are they?
No difference to customers, or there should be no difference to customers. All of the back office stuff around Genesis has, for the last few years since they launched in the UK, been a separate company. They've had their own finance, their own, I imagine, facilities, their own, all sorts of, the whole sort of organizational structure. Well, why did you give this to the change guy? All that stuff has been, all the people part has all been independent of Hyundai thus far. They're changing that now. They have put pretty much everyone, I think the Autocar article and also the Car Dealer Magazine article, which came out first, was saying that basically everyone has been put into...
redundancy consultation.
Redundancy consultation. Thank you for the correct wording.
They are going to remain employees. I'm quoting here from the Autocar article that's linked in the show notes, as ever. They're going to remain employees until January 2024. It's
not an immediate switch off. Some will roll over into Hyundai, but nobody's really quite sure. Germany and Switzerland, which are the other European markets for Genesis, everything is continuing to operate independently. The other change is they're moving more to an agency model, so there will be more physical places you can go and visit and see a Genesis, rather than the predominantly online-only model that they've had so far, which requires a certain amount of awareness to go and look for stuff, whereas if there is a nice showroom near other nice showrooms, then there is a high chance that people who are unaware of Genesis will wander in and have a look and maybe buy one.
Mm-hmm.
If you are reading the Autocar article, there is a line towards the bottom, the end, which says Genesis has sold just 1,188 cars in the UK as of October 2023, giving a market share of 0.05%. Lexus has a market share roughly 10 times that size. Okay, don't hold too much by that. Lexus has a significantly larger range and has been available in the UK for approximately 15 times longer than Genesis. Let's try again with the equivalencies, shall we, folks?
How many blue whales is that?
Yes. It's the size of Wales, more cars. Yes, it's pretty nonsensical, folks. Do be aware of that paragraph and just have the old salt bucket to hand.
Right, I'm going to take us to JLR now. And they announced last week that they have spent £10 million in beefing up the security of older Range Rover models. If we remember, I think we covered this or talked about it. I've certainly seen enough articles on it.
The fact that you can steal one in 15 seconds.
Yes. And insurers were beginning to say in certain parts of the country, no, we refuse to insure that because it's just going to disappear off your driveway or outside your house.
Was there not at one point the JLR approved insurance scheme refused to cover somebody's?
It does say in that
somebody's Range Rover.
Yes, it does say that they actually withdrew their cover at one point. JLR have had, or the engineers have been working furiously away in the background to try and make it so that these are very difficult to steal now. And they are confident that they have done this, and they are rolling out an update for models built between 2018 and 2022, which is some 65,000 cars, which is quite a decent amount, actually. Especially considering 2 of those years they couldn't get things.
I was just thinking, at least they can get the parts for this. I think it's quite... This is almost a recall, but it's not a safety recall and it's not a government-mandated recall.
It's a reputational repair.
It is reputational recall because, as it says in the article here, the challenges with the previous generations of Range Rover were having a knock-on effect with the generation covered here. And the theft problems were having a knock-on effect on the sales of new models. It's a good marketing thing to do, as well as a good thing to do for the customers and for owners. So even if you're not covered by warranty or anything like that, or it's never been near a dealer in its time with you, take it along and try and get it fixed and changed. A friend of mine who used to sell Land Rovers and Range Rovers, he once showed me a video from CCTV of one of his customers' Range Rovers being stolen. And it took no longer than 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And it's not one of the videos that was been doing the laps of social media.
No. They're not flinching when you're getting quotes from senior JLR people. They're not flinching from realizing this was a massive problem. And they wouldn't have budgeted in having to spend so much to fix this. And then to, 1, solve the problem. And then 2, go out and update the cars. So that whatever it is they've done means it can't happen now as it had been. Yeah.
Good on them for this one.
Yeah.
It's very much a case of doing the right thing. And I think that's always admirable.
Feel perhaps lessons will have been learnt, maybe across the whole industry on this sort of thing.
I'm sure that this kind of stuff will be being discussed behind doors and people comparing notes with their colleagues and other companies, I'm sure.
Because if you've got insurers saying, no, we're not covering your vehicle, that's quite hard to sell then.
Yeah.
Okay, we're talking of something good to something absolutely nuts then, please, Alan.
This is absolutely bat poo. There has been an advert on Facebook. There's been an advert for the Toyota HILUX. And it's a multiplicity of HILUX. And they are crossing the desert and fording a river and doing Hiluxy things in Africa. This advert has been banned It's been deemed socially unacceptable by the Advertising Standards Authority, who probably have little sleeves on their table legs to stop the employees being unintentionally aroused by them or something. The advertising watchdog said Toyota's promotion had not been prepared with a sense of responsibility to society and presented and condoned the use of vehicles in a manner that disregarded their impact on nature and the environment. Right. Oh, how many people complained? One person complained.
Now, come on. In the past, we have defended the fact that they will look at things when only a single person takes the time and the effort to say to them, hang on, don't feel that's correct to have advertised in that manner because of whatever reason. And that is right, because otherwise you are just listening to whoever has the most voices, and that's not right. However, that being said, I am applauding the mechanism, not this instance, because what has been complained about is absolutely nuts, because it is a pickup that is designed to go off-road, and they show it easily going off-road in environments it is expecting to sell into.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not comfortable with the whole responsibility to society, sense of responsibilities, because that's depends on, as you were saying before, the waxing of the moon, the mood the person is in that day, and that's not a...
But whether or not they're aroused by a table leg or...
Yeah, that is not a very obvious right and wrongs, because that is down to interpretation at that point.
Anyway, if you'd like to watch the advert, it is actually linked from the AM Online.
That was a touch I really liked.
The AM Online article, which is linked from our show notes. I would never have heard of the advert had it not been for the Advertising Standards Authority. So jolly good, everyone. Well done. That's nicely done, yes.
Yep. I'm going to go to Paris now.
Oh, I wish.
Well, not at the moment, because you can't go on the pavements and you can't take a car anywhere.
I know.
Or you soon won't be able to, because Paris is now hot on the heels of banning their micro-mobility options. They are now looking at higher charging for cars based on weight. People have talked about SUVs and stuff like that. It's nothing to do with it isn't going to be one of those size and weight. This is down to weight. So it is not an SUV specific thing here, because a Jimny, I don't think, weighs over 1.6 tons.
No, it does not.
But I would suggest an E-Class diesel might weigh a bit more than that.
Guess. And for electric cars over 2 tons as well. Yes. I don't think you actually said that bit.
Yeah, no, I was going to get to that. Electric cars over 2 tons will also be charged higher for parking fees. If it was all about weight and you want smaller vehicles or lighter vehicles, because see, this is the thing.
The thing is that Paris used to have an awful lot of older little tiny cars, and then they banned all of those. And everybody went for micromobility solutions, which admittedly, from eyewitness reports of people living in Paris, made the pavements an absolute minefield.
So that's a policing issue.
It is a policing issue.
Lower inverted commas policing.
Yeah. And now they're starting to charge again for cars.
It's almost as though they don't want people to move around in Paris.
Well, this is a big problem. So remember that the mayor, Anne Hidalgo, is from the Green Party, as is the deputy mayor, David Bayard. They are having a big crackdown on all these things, and people wouldn't mind so much if they actually felt that the public transport was improving at the same time. It does not seem that the public transport is improving at the same time, and so everybody sees this as just yet more taxes.
More taxes and making people's lives harder to do the things they're trying to do.
Making it inconvenient for the majority of people with no reasonable alternative that they see. Paris, when it comes to getting around, is actually a bit of a mess right now. End of story. Reintroduce the Autolib, everyone. Reintroduce the Autolib. It caused some challenges, but it also solved a whole load of others, because people could just use a car when they needed a car. Whereas that's not possible anymore. I say that because the person who was also telling me about those was a fanatical Autoliv user. Really, really noticed when they left. Partly, he said, because there was one station outside his apartment, one station outside the office, and he never had to walk more than 200 feet at either end.
Well, should you move on from Paris and charge our batteries?
Well, yeah, actually, one of the things that Autoliv has left behind in Paris is a network of slow chargers and on-street EV charging. But speaking of EV charging, the SAE International, so that's the kind of global standards company, you know, remember, we've got British standards, the BS 408 and all these kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Then SAE is the international standard, do cover the same kind of stuff, but international standards for things. And they've announced that the positioning system for wireless electric vehicle charging, so for induction charging, will be the one proposed by the supplier Mahler. It is going to be the Global Alignment Methodology for Electric Vehicle Wireless Charging, and it's going to be SAE J2954. Just in case you want to order up a copy for yourself, that's SAE J2954. Actually, Mahler call it the DIPS, so Differential Inductive Positioning System. This doesn't get any less technical, folks. It's based on the magnetic field, and it automatically establishes the connection depending on how strong the field is and where it's positioned. It says a special navigation system in the vehicle display supports the driver so the car is in the ideal position. The charging process starts automatically. I've seen demos of this way back in the early days of Formula E when it was Qualcomm. Well, it was a Qualcomm system that was being demonstrated. And again, in an i3, it was a case of reversing it. The demonstrator, it was on a phone app. And as you reversed into place, it told you whether you should go left a bit, right a bit, forward a bit, back a bit, until you were positioned sufficiently above the panel. You don't have to be exactly above it. But of course, the more you're above it, I'm going to say the better the contact, for want of a better term, whether it works or not, whether it's the entire coil and stuff.
Well, I look forward to a whole new host of bings and bongs as vehicles guide us in then.
Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah,
by the way, it's worth mentioning, according to Mahler, vehicle also works with autonomously parked vehicles, and even in unfavorable environmental conditions, such as a layer of snow or damp leaves, it should be very simple and reproducible. There is a threshold in there. To be honest, Andrew, the autonomously parking stuff, as demonstrated on the little video on YouTube, which has the highest number of hits of any of our videos on YouTube, which is quite scary, of just the Toyota Yaris Cross parking in a car park, parking itself in the car park. I can believe that would work perfect. Don't see why that wouldn't work.
I would imagine there would be something in the pad to guide the vehicle in to make it easy for the vehicle to go, because it's a very constrained little environment, working environment for it to understand. So that's relatively simple thing for them to do properly program properly. I could see that happening.
I mean, Randy the Roomba down there can pretty much do it. Different way. But Randy the Roomba works his way onto his little chargy pads most of the time. Anyway, I think it's cool. This kind of standardization is hopefully one of the steps on the way to making something which is out there commercially viable and transferable between multiple manufacturers. Good news.
Yep, absolutely. Well, apologies to anyone who jogs along to the first part, but Alan, I think we've managed it.
I've just tried to really spin it out there. We've reached Guilt Minute, the quick break in the show where we ask for a tad of financial support to keep the lights on, the hosting running. If you feel that Motoring Podcast is worth a small consideration every month, then you can become a patron. Different levels of patron include different levels of commitment from us to you, including being able to watch the show recorded live. We also have a small range of merchandise in our spring store, from stickers to mugs and t-shirts. If you don't have any spare cash, and we completely understand, then you can help us by following for free from a podcast player to receive every show as they're released, and by liking and rating the show in whatever way your podcast supplier lets you. If you've done all that, and some of you do, so thank you very, very much. then the last thing you can do is to recommend us to your friends or colleagues.
Thank you, everyone that does. Much appreciated. Okay, new car news. And I'm going to start with the Peugeot E3008. This is the next generation 3008. It's going to be obviously EV. And they've decided to eschew the family-friendly design of the current generation and go for an SUV coupe thingy. Oh my God.
I read a thing about this. They were going to make two slightly different body styles, one for the sporty ones and one for the non-sporty ones. And very senior management came along and said, no, just make that one. And pointed at the sporty one.
Yes, because if you want the more practical, family-orientated one, you have to wait for the 5008, which is obviously going to be bigger.
I.e. not a coupe. It's another one of these SUV coupe things. You can tell from my tone that I dislike the idea. I think it's just like intentionally sort of cutting off your nose to spite your face, because we're huge fans of the previous generation of 3008.
Because the rest of the car looks really good. I like the interior. I like the outside design that they've got going on. The front end looks really good till you get below the license plate. The grille looks really good and the lights. And then they've gone and decided we don't want you families who need to put a pram in or some suitcases and stuff.
Or a dog.
And they're making it clear they're going after the how do they put it? The start of our C-segment offensive.
Are you offended?
Well, yes, quite. So they've succeeded. Because if you can afford a 3008, that does not necessarily mean you can afford a 5008, which is going to be bigger.
Do you know what this is? This is all coupe and slopey. I mean, partly because it's an EV and it's aerodynamics and stuff, but it's also because of the sort of Tesla Model 3 and Y. And
once again, the car industry learning the wrong lessons from a certain US EV company.
I mean, at least the interior looks like it's actually been furnished.
Yeah, I really like the interior. They've gone for cloth finishes again, which is good. No doubt, if you reach right under and in the back of some places, I'm sure somebody could find some hard plastic somewhere.
Hard plastic fetishist, I know.
Some fetish. Satisfied. I just think it's a really missed opportunity, and I think they will lose sales off the back of this. I don't think they will gain up enough of people going, oh, I want an SUV coupe. That'll do.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, prices, sorry. Starts at 45,850. There is going to be a range of up to 326 miles, apparently, and offer 316 brake horsepower. More details in the Autocar article that's linked in the show notes if you want to find out more stuff about this. But
I wonder how heavy it is.
We are disappointed, Peugeot. That's what we are.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Sorry. In some of these early announcements, people are going to have to start giving an indication of the weights of these. Given the Paris announcement, sorry, I was having a quick scroll through again. Even in light of that sort of Paris announcement, you know that they're going to be the first, and that London will be along soon.
Well, it's openly being discussed for British towns and cities of introducing that type of parking thing. And if you look in certain segments,
of course it is,
of the media, then there is very much an anti-large vehicle campaign.
A while ago, I was watching a thing about roundabouts, believe it or not, on YouTube. Roundabouts in the US.
How do you fill the long winter nights on?
I know. It's all else to do. I was watching a thing about roundabouts. They were saying that there used to be far, far more roundabouts in the US. But then along came essentially big traffic light. And they came along and they sold people on the idea of these four-way stops and all the junctions and traffic lights and all these kind of things. And they sold the councils on it because it would be safer. And I have a funny feeling that what we've now got is big parking outsource company is coming along and selling all these councils on, look how clever we can be with variable parking so you can actually ramp up the parking costs, where, of course, they'll be getting a cut of it. Does anybody fancy investigating whether big parking app are behind this? I'm not really joking either.
No.
I think it's worth looking at, and just who is pushing for this the highest, What do the councils get out of it? Anyway, if you want something which is still from Stellantis, but cheaper and more practical than the new E3008, then why not try the new Vauxhall Astra Sports Tourer Electric? It arrives with a base price of $39,995. Ouch. It has 256-ish miles of range, and it has a larger boot capacity. Nobody's saying in this Autocar article what the range is once it has roof bars and a set of ladders on top.
Or not premium quality photocopy paper in the boot.
Yes. Well, the days of the photocopier are gone, almost. I know. 516 litres of luggage space compared to 352 in the Astra hatch. That goes up to 1,553 litres with the rear seats folded down. That's pretty impressive. 54 kilowatt-hour battery, 153 brake, and 199 pound-foot of torque through the front axle. Should be able to get 4.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which is pretty decent.
Well, that'd be good.
Recharging up to 100 kilowatt, 20 to 80%, about 26 minutes, charger dependent, of course, or charger location dependent. You lose 2 miles of range over the hatchback, but otherwise it's exactly the same. The Sportster Electric, slightly more expensive than the hatch. Design trim comes in, as I said, at $39,995. That's £2,550 more expensive than the hatch. And then there's another couple of specs. Ultimate is the top. You end up with adaptive headlights, panoramic sunroof, adaptive cruise, 360 cameras, all the good stuff, 45,505, which puts it in alignment with that E3008 that we've just talked about. I'd rather have the Astra, to be honest. Sorry.
Than the 3008, yeah. But there's going to be an E308 coming soon, which will basically be the same thing underneath.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't remember the pricing on that. I can't remember whether Peugeot are coming in less expensive than Vauxhall, because we got the feeling a few months ago.
Yeah, the Vauxhalls were all so much more expensive.
Which seemed a bit unfair.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, an electric estate, let's cheer that.
Yes, and it's not an SUV, whatever you're defining an SUV to be, because that's really been annoying me this week.
It has. Well, talking of SUVs, no, it's not an SUV. This is an EV off-roader. This is the Callum Skye. This is a small off-road electric vehicle, two-door, only 1,150 kilograms. So you can go into Paris with this, Alan.
You've just beat me to my next line. So it's really cheap to park in Paris. But yeah, and it's about the same size as a Renault Clio, which is perfect for parking in Paris.
It has around 170 miles range from a 42 kilowatt per hour battery. It looks a little bit like a rally raid-y thing, but much more friendlier and cuddlier.
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to describe it.
It is not a threatening-looking vehicle.
No, it's not got a big footprint at all. Do click in the show notes on the link, because there's a couple of pictures in here that really demonstrate the size of it. There's one where there's picture or render. There's a lady walking along the street and they show it, and it shows just how small it really is.
I actually really like that render. I know it's a very complicated render and difficult to do, but I love it because it gives you an idea of scale. And so often when people are showing off all these renders, the scale is completely missing. So I really like that one. Also, I love the color, and I think it just looks fab.
Yeah. Looks. It's very much an Alan vehicle.
Yes.
It
Unfortunately.
Is it not at Alan prices?
No, well, they're going to build about 50 of them, or up to 50 at the factory in Warwickshire. There is no price has yet been calculated, but I'm quoting here straight from the Autocar article. No price has yet been calculated, but it is understood the partners are aiming at around £100,000 as a target figure. That's not very Alan-friendly, I'm afraid. It's very cool, though.
Yeah, I do like that.
I wish I had. I wish I had the resources. Because
it does exclusive. It's going to be quickish. It's really pretty quick, 4 seconds, I think.
And nobody's going to know.
It's also 4x4, which, I mean, it is the modern day Vehicross, almost.
It's not quite. It's the original Vehicross concept, which had a 3-cylinder triple. In head of engineering, Adam Don Francesco, who some of you remember we had on a couple of times during the COVID days on a couple of special editions. Adam's a good chap as well.
Mm.
Excellent stuff. Last but not least, I've ended up with this story, which is one very close to Andrew's heart, and to be honest, solves pretty much the only challenge I had with the previous generation Tucson. There's been a facelift to the Hyundai Tucson. The most notable thing is...
Yeah, because it's pretty much only the inside.
It's easy. I mean, it looks just the same on the outside. Most notable thing is buttons for the ventilation controls. Yay, and knobs, and all these things.
And the full width screen that Hyundai use now.
Yes, and the full width screen. But nobody cares about that. What they care about are the buttons and knobs for the ventilation, because that was the one thing that was really fidgety and annoying when I had one for a week. These Tucsons are really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, the semi-touchscreen haptic feedback button bits for the ventilation were finicky and not the most reliable things. This is nice, and it looks good, and you get all the same functionality out of it, obviously. But the stuff that you use more regularly is now a button. Really like these Tucsons.
I think they've moved the drive selector onto the steering column as well now, so it frees up a load of room for the central tunnel.
Yeah, it looks like it. A whole bunch of bits and pieces like that.
Very much in line with they've brought it up to date with the rest of their range, whether it's electric or not, and it's all the better for it.
I agree, and this is one of the best-selling cars in the UK. It's worth remembering that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, a huge success for Hyundai, and well, I think well deserved. I like it.
Yep. Right, I'm going to take us into points of interest, and I'm going to start with the lunchtime read. This is from Haggerty, and it's Matteo Licata. And guess what? It's about an Italian car company. I know that's a surprise.
From Matteo and Alfa Romeo?
It's a shocking surprise. But this is, I'm going to read the headline here, Ford's failed takeover of Alfa Romeo. Now, I didn't know about this, but then again, I'm not as steeped in car history as many others, including my colleague on the other end of the video here.
It's just because I'm the kind of guy that watches YouTube videos about roundabouts versus traffic lights in America. It is something that just annoys the heck out of me.
But obviously, the main one that we hear about with Ford is how Ferrari didn't get sold to them and all that came out of that. But that in the 80s, Ford came back and tried to get Alfa Romeo. So this tells you the whole history of, and I love his ending paragraph, which you need to read to the whole thing. I'm not going to say it because it will spoil it. But I just love his ending paragraph to it because I think it just rounds out this story and the information really nicely. Because it is a story of what ifs and maybes and could haves, and we don't know, but it's an excellent. I love finding out this sort of stuff.
Yeah, me too. That's one of those things that I like when sites do long form articles.
Yes, please.
When they don't necessarily have to, and this is the kind of wonderful stuff that you learn as a result of that. And fewer sites are doing long form articles, which is difficult for us to choose a decent lunchtime read. But I love, this is exactly why I love them. You learn, I mean, I knew that it had kind of happened, but I didn't know the details. So excellent piece by Matteo as always. And thank you to Haggerty for continuing to publish this stuff. Please don't stop.
Yes, please don't. You've made changes recently. Don't make any more changes.
Yeah. Which means that List of the Week lands with me. And it's 11 21st century hot hatches with 1980s spirit. It's an Anthony Ingram one, so it's a little bit left field as well as pretty right. Yes, there are only 11, so that means that this has fallen quite nicely and I'm not allowed to choose one. I've owned two of the things on the list.
Well, there's three here I would not pick. I've owned one. The ones that are left is really very tough.
So I can work out two of the ones you wouldn't pick. Oh, I think I know what the third one you wouldn't pick is. Okay.
I'm going to go for, because it's mad as a box of frogs, the Suzuki Ignis Sport.
Yes!
I love the fact that they had mesh in the headrests. In the center of the headrest, there was that mesh that was it color coded? I can't remember.
No, it was always yellow. Didn't matter on the spec. It was always yellow.
But I love that little it's a nothing touch. It cost them money to do, but it made a small delight and joy.
They're really cool. The trouble these days is finding a good one.
No, you can't.
In the hunt for... So, I feel it should be pointed out that when Johnny Yaris was purchased, Johnny Yaris was not necessarily going to be a Yaris. But Mark I Minis were phenomenally, Isogonis Minis, phenomenally expensive if you wanted a floor in them. So those got vetoed early on. And then Ignis Sports, YRV Turbos, which is not on the list, so I feel okay mentioning that, were also in the running, as were early Swift Sports. The challenge with the Ignis, though, was finding a good one, because lots of them had got cheap enough that they had their little socks thrashed off, sadly. But they are very cool if you get a good one.
Like those a lot.
Yes. Obviously, I'm a fan of the JST Sport. I prefer the SR, actually.
Okay. Well, that leaves us now with the and finally. And it's...
somebody's accusing it of being lazy journalism.
What's lazy journalism?
Ooh, the list. I'm sorry, I made the mistake of scrolling into the...
Did you look at the bottom half of the internet
I'm
again,
scrolled into the bottom of the... It was an accident. I didn't mean to, sorry. I think the person is wrong. Okay.
As I was saying, the and finally, think of it as a supplementary lunchtime watch. It's from Hubnut. It's been a little while since we've showcased any of his, but this only came out this weekend. It's brilliant. It's City Bug Quarry Racing. It effectively... What is it? Is it auto
test? It's essentially an auto test, but in this case, it's in a quarry, so it's on a loose surface. And on the horrific day they filmed this, where they're just about, it's a wonder I don't. Obviously, Miss Husband is holding the camera and tripod in position during some of the outside filming because it's foul.
But it goes to show how accessible some forms of motorsport can be. And this is a great one into it, because this reminds me of that, who's the vet guy who built the Caterham? Mark. He did a series for a while of different cars that he built. He did a Land Rover, he did a Caterham, but he also did his motorsport license and did different types of motorsports at the time he was building this. And one of them was an auto test. I don't think my brain is wired to be able to do an auto test properly. I get to maybe the third thing and then forget what I was meant to be doing.
Yeah, you never did the Toyota Parallel Pomeroy.
No,
which was a similar thing of, so I go forward to the first line, back to the original line, forward to the second line, back to, and just got completely confused in that. But I would love to do more auto tests. It was just finding somewhere that did it. And just when I was at the point to be able to do that, then along came COVID. And then that smashed everything up. There's Peterborough Motor Club, I think, run a few.
Okay.
But then it's just where they were and how to join and all that stuff can be really quite hard to find. So, yeah, I would love to do more of this. It points out here, go to motorsportuk.org to find more clubs in the UK. Do that.
Yep. Good little video. Great little idea. Maybe inspire one or two listeners to do some.
Yes, and it doesn't need lots and lots of money. As say, even the little 107 they were using there, it has to have secure seats, working seat belts, and some of the bits and pieces, but it doesn't necessarily need an MOT.
No, it's 25 quid to enter.
Awesome stuff. Great, I love that kind of thing. I think that's us for this week.
It is.
No doubt, because we're recording this on a Monday, there will be many big and important announcements that come out before our usual recording time, because that's what happens. We'll be back to the normal recording time-ish next week.
Yes. Normal schedule will be resumed.
Yes. But don't forget that between now and then, you can give us any feedback, share your thoughts with the show at Motoring Podcast on Twitter and Instagram, on Facebook, and on the contact page of motoringpodcast.com. Hub of all our activities. Remember, you can support us financially via Patreon. Please leave a review and rating on Apple Podcasts or however your podcast app lets you do such a thing. Andrew, in the meantime, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is via Twitter or Mastodon. If you search for Crap Windscreen, you should find me there. And Alan, if people would like to know more about roundabouts in America, what's the best way for them to speak to you personally?
Best way is via Twitter, or I'm on Blue Sky more than any of the others, really, but any of the grown-up social media services where I'm at AJP Bradley. That's BRADLEY. We'll be back very soon, as I say, but until then, I've been Alan Bradley.
I've been Andrew Clues.
And safe motoring.